Hi, my name's Emma Block and I'm the author of Get Started with Gouache. I'm an illustrator and I live in London. This is my home studio. I absolutely love gouache. It's such a brilliant paint and weirdly there aren't very many resources about it. I didn't actually discover it until after I left university, and I've been painting for most of my life. I've had 5 years of formal art education and I never came across it. So when I did start using gouache, I absolutely loved it. It's such a versatile paint. You can create really beautiful painterly effects, sort of layer it up, but it's also great for creating really bold, graphic, clean lines and shapes and block colours. You can use it quite dry and create a lot of texture. You can water it down and use it a bit like watercolours. There's so much you can do with it. So I'm really looking forward to introducing you to this paint and showing you a really fun, simple project that you can have a go at. So let's talk about gouache and what it actually is. So this is gouache and it comes in tubes and it's an opaque water-soluble paint. What does that mean? So I'm going to give you a little demo and also compare it to two other paints that you might be familiar with. So that is watercolors and acrylic paint. Comes in a tube like this. You need to squeeze it out into a palette. Other things you need apart from the paint is palette, brush, some water, and you're going to need some paper. So I've got 2 sheets of paper here. So straight out of the tube, it's quite thick and we can create this kind of lovely dry texture around the edges. And then if I add some more water, you can see it behaves much more like watercolours. You can kind of move it around on the paper a little bit like that. So because it's water soluble, that means that even after it's dry, it can be re-wetted. So when it's dry on the palette, you can add water to re-wet it. And when it's dry on the paper, you can also add water. So this is completely dry, not smudging. But if I have a wet brush, you can see straight away it re-wets like that. And when I say that it's opaque, it means that it's not transparent. So let's quickly look at the other paints just for comparison. So this is the watercolor. So it looks quite similar to this watered down gouache, and you can't really get a dry texture with it. And then the acrylic can look quite dry and textured, so similar to the gouache again, and you can get this nice dry texture around the edges. Let's have a look at the opacity. So to make that really obvious, I've got some black paper here. So first of all, the gouache, which should be nice and opaque, and when I apply that to the black paper, it stands out nicely. So let's compare that to the watercolours, which are here, and you can sort of see it initially, but it's not really standing out the same way that the gouache does. And as the gouache dries, it's going to get more opaque, and as this dries, it's going to get more transparent, less opaque. And then we can compare that to the acrylic paint. So the acrylic paint is also opaque like the gouache, but only where it's thick. Around the edges you can see the black paper through, so it's not quite as opaque as the gouache. The final test with these two, so this side of the watercolours is dry and the acrylic is dry as well. So if I have a clean brush and I try to re-wet this the way I did with the gouache, it's not happening, it's not going to budge. So with acrylic paint, once it's dry, that is it. It's almost like plastic. It's kind of shiny, it's durable, but if it dries on your brush or your palette, you can't reuse it. And then the watercolor, is water soluble, so as I start working the paint, it lifts the pigment away from the surface and we can re-wet it. So that's what I mean when I say that gouache is opaque and water soluble. So I'm going to show you how to paint this ice cream, which is a project in the book, and it's super cute, and as you can see we create lots of gorgeous texture. So let's get started. These are the colours we're going to use for the ice cream. So we've got white, flame red, or you could use scarlet, yellow ochre and burnt sienna. And then for the toppings, you can do those any colours you like, but I've got permanent green, primary blue, spectrum red and black. And I'm going to use a couple of different brushes. I love using different shaped brushes to create texture. So I've got square, angled, and then this little round one for the details. But if you don't have these, you could also just use a round brush like this as well, which is really versatile. And we're going to need some paper and a palette.